Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. There's a lot of political headlines to get to today.
What's up, everybody? So this is Michael. I am, or Thorzane rather. I'll edit that part out, but I am reacting to uh just content and seeing what gets out there. This one is it's actually talking about Russia-Ukraine war, and I'm gonna listen to this guy and we're gonna see what's going on.
Given that Zelensky is visiting the United States this week, but also the UN General Assembly is meeting in New York. Let me read for you some of these headlines. Russia can only be forced into peace. This is what Zelensky tells the United Nations. Addressing a special UN Security Council session, Zelensky joined the United States in pressuring Iran and North Korea over their military support for Russia. So that's the headline. Russia can only be forced into peace. What's the Kremlin's response?
Bold.
Forcing Russia into peace.
That's pretty bold to say you're gonna try to force Russia to peace, but I do agree with that. It's like the amount of work that they put into trying to make sure that they're fucking that they weren't just gonna fucking lose that war entirely is wild. They should have, honestly, Ukraine should have actually lost. They were so fortunate that Russia was well underprepared for what they were actually getting themselves into. If that didn't happen, the United States didn't chip in, and all these other countries would have been fucked. You wouldn't have to worry about them. Like, they just would not exist. But no, that didn't happen. So see what's going on next.
Would be a fatal mistake, says the Kremlin. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters, such a position is a fatal mistake, a systemic mistake for Russia to be peaceful. For 500 years, this is what the Russians have been doing, expanding in every direction, attacking their neighbors, and then stealing their land, Russifying the people, committing genocide, erasing their ethnic identities, suppressing their cultures and languages. This is the natural state of an empire. Empires continuously have to expand, otherwise they collapse. So the last 30 years since 1991, whatever the Russian Federation was, whatever it was supposed to be when it drafted a new constitution, that's not what it is today. It's an empire. And they are going to continuously be at war. They're going to be continuously attacking their neighbors and trying to steal their land, because that's what empires do. That's what the Russians have been doing for 500 years. And Putin is furious that
first try.
The world community just isn't allowing it. Putin proposes broader criteria for using nuclear arms. Why isn't it working? This is what the Russians are asking themselves. We have 6,000 nuclear weapons. Shouldn't we be allowed to attack anyone we want?
I did.
Shouldn't we be allowed to kill anyone we want? We have 6,000 nuclear weapons. So here's Putin saber rattling again during one of his Security Council meetings. Let me read for you what he's saying now about his nuclear arsenal. I would especially like to draw your attention to the following. In the updated version of the document, aggression against Russia by any non-nuclear state, but with the participation or support of a nuclear state, is proposed to be considered as a joint attack on the Russian Federation.
Oh my god, I fucking got it.
For Russia's transition to the use of nuclear weapons are also clearly fixed now. We will consider this possibility when obtaining.
So basically, what they're trying to say is they're trying to make it where they're trying to threaten it or stage this where they're trying to scare the United States, saying like, "Hey, we are going to actually use nukes." They've been doing this shit for fucking ever, and this is one where they could maybe say like in the history books or some shit like, "Hey, we did the right thing. We wrote in our policy it still wouldn't stop," or some shit. It's almost like they're trying to cover their ass more than actual threats at this point.
Reliable information about the massive launch of aerospace vehicle attacks and their crossing of our state border, meaning strategic or tactical aircraft, cruise missiles, drones, hypersonic missiles, and other aircraft. We reserve the right to use nuclear weapons in case of aggression against Russia and Belarus.
They're just
Belarus
jerking
being
themselves
a
off.
member of the Union States. All these issues have been agreed upon with the Belarusian side and the president of Belarus, including if the enemy uses conventional weapons to threaten our sovereignty. In conclusion, I would like to note that all clarifications are thoroughly verified and proportionate with modern military threats and risks to the Russian Federation. Wah!
It's just so fucking stupid.
I have nukes. Why won't you let me win?
Quite literally what I said
We're
before.
already too deep, guys. What the Western Alliance, what NATO has done, we're already participating in this war. But Russia is the aggressor. This is not Ukraine being aggressive or hostile against Russia. Russia started this war, and Ukraine is just defending itself. Every day the Russians push, they advance, they're continuing this war. When this war will end, the second Russia just goes back to their own country and stays there. Russia has destroyed all thermal power plants, nearly all hydroelectric capacity in Ukraine ahead of this winter, according to President Zelensky. Russia is preparing to attack 3 nuclear power plants in Ukraine, Zelensky tells the United Nations. This is very important, so I'm going to share this clip from his speech to the UN.
Recently, I received yet another alarming report from our intelligence. Now, Putin does seem to be planning attacks on our nuclear power plants and their infrastructure, aiming to disconnect the plants from the power grid. With the help of satellites, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, satellites of other countries.
Who could that other country be? It's probably not North Korea or Iran, it's probably China. But at one point, Ukraine had 5 nuclear power plants. We all know what happened to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. And the Russians did capture the Zaporizhia one. So there's only 3 remaining nuclear power plants in Ukraine. And Russia's going to do it. At some point in the next couple months, Russia is going to start bombing these nuclear power plants. Russia doesn't really care if there's some kind of meltdown and radioactive debris flies everywhere. Most of it's going to land in Belarus and Poland, and Russia doesn't care if their own people die, so they don't care if anyone in Belarus is affected. This is insane on every level that we're having this conversation. Yeah. But Russia's already destroyed all the thermal power plants. They've already destroyed most of the hydroelectric power generation. And this is their strategy. Just destroy all the power plants. Plunge Ukraine and 40 million people into complete darkness. So Putin is specifically
trying to kill their civilians without using nukes.
France, the UK, and the United States. France has been pretty quiet lately. Macron had a lot more confidence earlier this year, prior to those tumultuous elections. So let's get the UK's response first. UK tells Putin, "You're a slave-owning mafia boss." If you want to hear how it's done, this is the UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy, and here's what he said to the Russians' face at the UN Security Council meeting.
I also want to speak directly to the Kremlin and its representative here today. And Vladimir Putin, Russia sits on this council, but its actions tear up the UN Charter. Russia sits on this council, but over the weekend we saw it put forward amendments designed to wreck the UN's future. Russia claims to stand for the global south, but it runs roughshod over international law. Vladimir Putin, when you fire missiles into Ukraine hospitals, we know who you are. When you send mercenaries into African countries, we know who you are. When you murder opponents in European cities, we know who you are. Your invasion is in your own interests, yours alone, to expand your mafia state into a mafia empire, an empire built on corruption.
That's how you do it. So what's America's response? White House questions Zelensky's victory plan, cites lack of strategy beyond weapons requests. This week was all about Zelensky sharing a classified peace proposal to members of Congress. Donald Trump was supposed to get it, Kamala Harris and Biden. And yeah, I don't think we need to build this up, guys. I don't think there's anything too secret in this plan. It's Ukraine saying, give us more weapons. And once Russia's in a losing position, they'll actually negotiate to stop this war. So let's just do it. Biden says we cannot let up on Ukraine. Support amid U.S. uncertain political future. President Biden is almost 82 years old. This was his last UN General Assembly speech. He will be leaving office in January. So over the next 3 months, there's a lot that President Biden can do to support Ukraine. And we'll start with this. White House announces $375 million in military assistance to Ukraine. This was planned. President Biden knew that Zelensky was visiting the United States this week, so he wanted to have this package ready. Inside is the usual good stuff to keep Ukraine in the fight day to day. But what wasn't planned was $7.9 billion. Biden announces continued support and a $7.9 billion security assistance package for Ukraine. People are very confused about what this money is. This $7.9 billion is not from the bill that Congress voted on back in May. Most of this money is under something called the Foreign Assistance Act. This is a pool of money that Congress gives to the president every year to rapidly respond to an emergency. In the event that Congress is not in session or Congress has to debate and vote on something, it's a pool of money that the president gets to help our allies respond quickly in the event of a crisis. Now, what President Biden wanted was to extend this authority 6 months or a year or whatever, but Congress wouldn't do it. So the only alternative was to use the rest of the money before it expired at the end of this month. You might have been hearing about this story of Ukraine aid expiring, but it's not specifically for Ukraine, but it can be used for Ukraine.
I could have done that fight a lot better.
President Biden
I just had no idea it was coming. I could have laid down some traps. I could have done all kinds of shit.
Another 2.4 comes under something called the U.S. AI commitment. What's going to be in this package? And the 2.4 billion is going to be munitions, air-to-ground munitions, UASs, equipment. I don't know. I don't even think the Pentagon knows. The money has been allocated, and they're going to start moving gear and equipment. Some of this 7.9 I do think will go to long-term contracts, like building a brand new Patriot system that Ukraine will get in 2 years, but we have to start that process at some point. But there will be additional billions in military aid arriving to Ukraine over this winter. This is huge news. U.S. rushes to supply Ukraine with $60 billion in aid before Biden's presidential term ends. So this is where the November election comes in. And the money that was allocated by Congress in May, Biden will have to spend all of it before Trump takes office. Biden doesn't want to do that. He would like to stretch this money out to support Ukraine for as long as possible. Congress may never vote again. But if Donald Trump wins, then all the money has to be allocated to Ukraine prior to January 20th. And if you're following the U.S. election, it's a coin flip. Now, Donald Trump lost the popular vote by 3 million votes in 2016. He lost by 7 million votes in 2020. And I'm predicting to you that Donald Trump is going to lose by over 10 million votes this November. But that doesn't matter, because that's not how we elect presidents. we use something called the Electoral College. Each state, based on their size, gets a certain number of votes. If you win that state, you win all the votes. And at the moment, Donald Trump only needs to win Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. All the other swing states are great, but that's basically his path to 270, to actually getting back in the White House. And Trump is mad about a recent event from this week. Let me explain. Trump blames Biden and Zelensky for not ending Russian invasion and wasting billions. The Republican presidential nominee spoke extensively about his take on Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine for the first time in months. Okay, what set Trump off? Local media in Pennsylvania ho-hum on Zelensky ammo plant visit. If you watched my last video, I showed you pictures and a video at the end of President Zelensky visiting this General Dynamics ammunition plant in Pennsylvania. This was nice. Zelensky just wanted to go to the factory and thank these workers. But Pennsylvania is a state that Donald Trump is trying really hard to win right now. So the controversy comes from this statement that Kamala Harris made in the debate 2 weeks ago. Trump is still mad that he lost the debate and he's still complaining about it every day. But when Kamala Harris said, "What do you think the 800,000 Polish Americans living in Pennsylvania think about your position on Russia, about you constantly bragging about your good relationship with Vladimir Putin?" This is what sets Donald Trump off, because there are Democrats at this event at the ammunition plant. This is Pennsylvania Senator Bob Casey, and this is Governor Josh Shapiro. They just happen to be Democrats. This is not a campaign event. There was not a vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz banner up in this plant. The sitting governor of the state is allowed to visit an ammunition plant, and the sitting senator of the state is also allowed to visit, given that he supports Ukraine and he voted for the aid package. But Republicans are complaining, saying that this was a election interference event from President Zelensky. House Speaker calls on Zelensky to fire the ambassador to the United States. Here is the press release put out by Speaker Mike Johnson. This is highly inappropriate of him. Let me read for you what he says. After organizing a partisan campaign event in a battleground state this week, Ukrainian Ambassador Oksana Marakova demonstrated she cannot be trusted to fairly and effectively serve as a diplomat in this country. President Zelensky must immediately remove her. First of all, I don't think Speaker Mike Johnson cares. This is Donald Trump speaking. Donald Trump told him to put out this statement demanding that Ukraine's ambassador to the United States be fired. It's even written here in the first sentence. I demand that you immediately fire Ukraine's ambassador to the United States. Speaker Mike Johnson would never use the word fire. In his tweet, he said remove, a softer word with the same meaning. To fire someone is Donald Trump's language. And where do we begin with this? The first thing is that Donald Trump is upset that pictures and videos were taken at this artillery factory, making Ukraine look good, and making the United States look good for supporting Ukraine. Donald Trump opposes both of these things. And as far as this being partisan, it's not Zelensky's fault. It's not the ambassador's fault that no Republicans wanted to come to this event. And if Republicans are jealous, if they think this is election interference, President Zelensky would be happy to meet with any and all of them, anywhere, anytime, battleground state or not. This man is trying to save his people from a genocide. So I was skeptical last week when Zelensky was saying he was going to meet with President Trump. I was saying to myself, there's no way Trump's going to agree to this. And sure enough, there will be no meeting between former President Trump and Zelensky. Trump is just refusing to coordinate a time and a place for Zelensky to meet him. The same is true for Speaker Mike Johnson. Speaker Mike Johnson is also refusing to meet with President Zelensky. However, if Speaker Johnson wants to talk about foreign election interference, what the heck is this? Why is Viktor Orban of Hungary allowed to go down to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump during an election season? Donald Trump is a private citizen. Donald Trump is not a representative of the US government right now. It's inappropriate for foreign leaders to be meeting with presidential candidates who hold no office in government. This is election interference. Viktor Orban went to visit Trump to support him and his candidacy for president. Meanwhile, at the artillery factory, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz were not there. And there's a couple foreign leaders willing to do this, willing to go to Mar-a-Lago during an election to kiss the ring and flatter Trump. Trump likes pretending he's still president. When these foreign leaders come, he puts up a flag and pretends like it's a state visit down at Mar-a-Lago. And yeah, this is foreign election interference. As an American, this is not okay, but it happens all the time with Donald Trump. So let's get to the statements he made. The country of Ukraine is absolutely obliterated. And Donald Trump speaks for himself. I'm just going to play the clip, and you be the judge. If this man in any way supports Ukraine and opposes Russia.
Because Ukraine is gone. It's not Ukraine anymore. You can never replace those cities and towns, and you can never replace the dead people, so many dead people. Any deal, even the worst deal, would have been better than what we have right now. If they made a bad deal, it would have been much better. They would have given up a little bit, and everybody would be living, and every building would be built, and every tower would be aging for another 2,000 years. And it will only get worse with these people. With Kamala she doesn't know what she's doing. More people will die. More cities will fall. The ones that fell will continue to receive more and more bombs. They'll be broken up asunder, worse than they are right now. Nothing is standing. The crops are dying.
Nothing is standing in Ukraine. The crops are dying. Everyone's dead. That is what Donald Trump is telling his tens of millions of followers.
There's really nothing for the Ukrainian people to move back to. And it didn't need to happen. Those buildings are down. Those cities are gone. They're gone. And we continue to give billions of dollars to a man who refuses to make a deal, Zelensky. There was no deal that he could have made that wouldn't have been better than the situation you have right now. You have a country that has been obliterated, not possible to be rebuilt. It'll take hundreds of years to rebuild it.
Ukraine has been obliterated, and it's impossible to rebuild. It would take hundreds of years to rebuild Vuhledar and Bakhmut.
There's not enough money to rebuild it if the whole world got together. They're not going to be satisfied until they send American kids over to Ukraine, and that's what they're trying to do. And the moms and dads of America don't want their kids fighting Ukraine and Russia. And we're not going to have our soldiers die across the ocean.
He's just fear-mongering. But he also loves to lie. Trump outburst U.S. support to Ukraine close to $300 billion, and the Europeans are all deadbeats. Trump told prospective Georgia voters the U.S. is getting taken for a ride, but European support to Ukraine, obviously the Europeans have provided more support to Ukraine. Humanitarian, financial, and military. The United States mostly only does military because we have the largest military. It's not over 200 billion yet. It's nowhere near 300 billion. But Trump loves to lie and he just makes stuff up. Here's the clip.
Biden and Kamala got us into this war in Ukraine, and now they can't get us out. They can't get us out. I watched him. We will. He's been saying that for 3 years. Every time Zelensky comes to the United States, he walks away with $100 billion. I think he's the greatest salesman on earth. But we're stuck in that.
That is Trump's audience booing President Zelensky. This is Donald Trump's favorite lie, that every time Zelensky visits the United States, he walks away with a check for $100 billion. This is Russian propaganda. This is Russian disinformation. Donald Trump is conditioning his supporters to hate President Zelensky, to hate Ukraine. And he starts this clip by saying, Biden and Kamala got us into this war, as if the United States military is directly involved, as if the United States military is already losing soldiers fighting in Ukraine, when that's not happening. The United States military is providing assistance, the same way we provide military assistance to Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Israel, and dozens of other countries around the world. It doesn't make America weaker when all we do is provide military assistance to our democratic allies. But Trump's not happy with that. Trump prefers dictators. Trump wants to be on the good side of China, North Korea, and Russia. Those are his friends.
That war, unless I'm president, I'll get it done. I'll get it negotiated. I'll get out. We got to get out. Biden says, we will not leave until we win. What happens if they win? That's what they do, is they fight wars. As somebody told me the other day, they beat Hitler, they beat Napoleon. That's what they do, they fight.
So somebody told Trump the other day, the Russians beat Hitler and the Russians beat Napoleon. I guess Trump didn't know that. He just learned this. The Russians beat Hitler and the Russians beat Napoleon. The Russians fight and win wars. That's what they do. Russia is strong. Russia is proud. Glory to Russia. So this is actually pretty stupid of Trump. He had been very careful the last 6 months not talking about Ukraine, just saying all ended in one day. But he's letting his hate and rage get the best of him. And this is a losing issue for Trump. 60% of Americans support continued military aid to Ukraine. Something like 80 or 90% think Ukraine is in the right, defending themselves from a full-scale invasion. Very few Americans are actually pro-Russian. It's like 10 or 11% willing to admit that. And those are the people that Donald Trump is playing towards. This is going to lose him votes. It's going to lose him states. I hope it does. I hope Trump continues to talk about Ukraine and Russia, exposing the fascist that he is. And I know there are people still watching my videos planning to vote for Trump in November. And you can't do it. You can't say you support Ukraine and vote for Donald Trump. Those are opposed positions. And I know there are other issues you care about more, but I'm saying directly to your face, if you're an American citizen planning to vote for Trump in November, you're helping Russia. You're killing Ukrainians if you vote for this man, if this man is allowed to return to the White House. Chaos and disorder, fascism and authoritarians will have a field day. Donald Trump will do nothing to protect democratic values and human rights around the world. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about you. He's only ever cared about himself. I'm sorry you've been the victim of various forms of right-wing propaganda to believe that America is failing and America is terrible and America is the worst country in the world unless Trump is president. That's insane. I pity you at this point if you're still supporting Trump. There's no excuse.
That last one go through here.
I know I'm going to lose subscribers. I don't care. I'm on the side of freedom. I'm on the side of justice. And I'm on the side of our democratic allies around the world. Authoritarian regimes, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, they have to be stopped. We're not letting them expand. and we can't elect somebody to be president of the United States who will not stand up to authoritarians around the world. Let's get to the bad news for Russia. 6 months worth of ammo wiped out in a recent Ukraine strike. This was the 3 depots, 2 in the Tver region, 1 in Krasnodar. But there's more depots, guys. There's definitely a couple more depots inside of Russia that might be visited in the next week or 2. I don't know exactly how Ukraine did it with these jet drone swarms, but I'm sure more are being manufactured, and we're going to see some more fireworks in the coming weeks. Russia to boost military spending to 40% of the state budget in 2025, according to Bloomberg. The increase would represent 6.2% of Russia's projected GDP, but 40% of their total government expenditures. This was funny. At the same time, Bloomberg reported that 30% of the budget is allocated for classified or unspecified items. 40% for the military, 30%, it's a secret. We're not telling you what we're doing with this money. This is bad news for Russian conscripts who were recently returned from Ukraine. Russian conscripts who were captured by Ukraine in the Kursk region and were exchanged as POWs are now being forced to sign military contracts and prosecutions because they surrendered. Because these 18, 19, 20-year-old conscripts chose to live, Russia is now punishing them by forcing them to sign contracts so they can go to the real front lines and fight and die for Russia. Russia reportedly installs Starlink on Shahed 136 drones. This is Elon Musk's Starlink being used by Russian kamikaze drones.
Fuck.
It would be wonderful if Elon Musk said something, condemned this, said he was working on stopping this from happening. But he's not, because Elon Musk supports Russia and supports Donald Trump. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Ukraine and Vietnam agreed to increase trade turnover in various fields. Vietnam has pledged $500,000 in humanitarian aid to Ukraine and expressed its readiness to assist in post-war reconstruction efforts. When we were drafting teams for World War III, I didn't think that the United States would be getting communist Vietnam. But yeah, all of China's neighbors hate China, and Vietnam views China. Communist Vietnam views China as a greater threat. So they would rather be supportive and allied towards Western nations because China's just being China. Netherlands to provide $233 million to Ukraine to restore critical infrastructure. Thank you so much to the Dutch people. Norway to allocate $9.5 million for evacuation of wounded from Ukraine to Europe. Thank you so much to the people of Norway. Final clip I have for you is what this is all about. This is what motivates Ukrainians to continue the fight, to continue to fight for freedom and their sovereignty from Russia. And Donald Trump doesn't understand this. He doesn't care about this. He'll never understand this.
That's memorial. Damn, fucking lost her. Holy shit. Yeah, that's a lot of fucking tombstones. Damn. I don't have any more water.
That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.
Funny. So, what did you guys think about that shit?
Welcome back to the most.
It was pretty crazy. This guy Jake Bro, I like to follow him a lot. He keeps me pretty well informed. He is definitely Democratic biased, but it's the only reason why he's, or more Democrat politically. The only reason why he's doing that is because half of the people on the Republican side just don't want anything to do with it, and they just refuse. Like, you understand, we already done this. Like, this is just a repeat of history. We already done this shit before. Like, we did this in World War II, Nazi Germany. They made peace. Like, hey, they took over their old countries, and then they promised not to do it again. And he flies back, yay! After they already took over like 2 or 3 countries, then they go over like take over France, and then they're just like kind of like trying to do a peace deal, like willing to give up fucking France. It was insane. Like, or like, yeah, it just they already done this. All that happens is that you give up a bunch of territory that they now own, and then they're like, hey, we're stronger now. Let's push more. Because Russia doesn't have to be afraid of Russia's 3 generals, which is like the winner too much, especially as far as defense goes. But holy shit, man! The more they push fucking west, the more warmer climate they're gonna get in, and like it's a lot of land they would control. Like, a third of the fucking food in the world, as far as like grain resources go. It's just fucking wild. Anyway, there's a lot more to do with it.